Hey, everybody, welcome to the podcast, Nail the Sale. We have Natalie today with us. She's one of the best closer I know. I never seen her in one country. Whenever I see her in the Facebook stories or her Facebook content or wherever she are, she's always in a different country. We're going to talk to her. And Natalie, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what your background is, how you're feeling coming over here. Let's get started.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thank you so much for having me. And yeah, I guess you and I technically met in this, crazy community of remote sales. And I've been in this industry now for 3 years, exactly 3 years. But
So,
prior to that, I was actually working in retail management. I actually did retail for probably 14 or 15 years, and I worked my way up in that
oh,
industry quite fast, actually. So I feel like that's kind of how I got almost stuck in that role. But I never wanted it to be forever. And so I was always looking for opportunities to be able to live the lifestyle that I have now. I really wanted to be able to not only work remotely, but really be able to work while traveling, whatever
yeah.
that looked like. I didn't really know. There's a lot of different avenues, obviously, that you can go down to make that a reality. And I tried and failed at a bunch of different things. And then I stumbled upon the world of remote sales through an ad, as most of us, I think, do. Back in the day, there was one specific ad that really got people into remote sales. And that's
Yeah.
ultimately how I found UCM and JD. And
Yes.
yeah, jumped in, and the rest is history. So now I'm able to travel the world full time. Originally from Toronto, but
Okay.
yeah, I moved all my belongings into a little 5 by 10 storage unit, and I've just been traveling the world full time for the last year and a half.
That's amazing. And tell us a little bit about your childhood, how it was, and how did you spend that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I had a really amazing childhood. My parents are incredible, and
Hmm.
my dad actually used to be a computer engineer, and he worked with a lot of like startup companies. So we actually moved around a ton. My parents got married in the Philippines, and then they moved right away to
Oh,
Spain. So I think
so
that's
they're
kind of why I
actually
have.
from Philippines, both of them?
They're from the Philippines originally, yeah,
Okay.
but they've been out of the Philippines longer than they ever lived there. So they
Okay.
moved away when they were 24 and 25. And then, yeah, we just kind of bounced around a ton actually when I was a kid.
Okay.
I was in Spain and grew up, for the most part, I grew up in Europe. And then we moved to Canada when I was
Oh,
12. So yeah, I think that that's kind of why I have a connection to Europe as well. I was able to see a lot of it when I was
yeah.
growing up. Just in different, we lived in a couple of different European countries and was able to see a lot of the continent when I was growing up. And now whenever I'm there, it feels very nostalgic and very it just kind of I feel the most like myself, I will say, when I'm in Europe.
Yeah, wow, that's really amazing. I think this traveling thing is connected to your childhood, right? Because you guys actually moved here, there, and lived in Europe. Your parents met in Philippines, right? And then you guys moved to Toronto. That's what your accent is as well, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
and you yourself, I don't know where you are at, every other day. So you travel
yeah.
a lot as well. That's what your passion is, and that's amazing. I really would love to know how your transition was because I know the person in retail, they cannot travel a lot because you are working almost like 10, 11 hours a day in a store, right? Or somewhere. So how did you transition?
Yeah, I mean, the I was really fortunate to work in really established companies, and I got really great experience in terms of management, people management specifically, as well as sales experience and leadership for sure. But like I mentioned earlier, it was just never something that I wanted to do forever. I always knew,
Yeah.
you're especially retail. I think that it's tough because you are working with the public, and any type of service based industry is incredibly tough. I think
Hmm.
that everyone needs to do it at least once in their life because it really
Absolutely.
does build character and resilience and tenacity because you're dealing with so many different personalities and different problems. And anyways, for me, I knew that it wasn't what I wanted to do forever, and you're always bound to a schedule, especially around holidays. I mean, forget about it, you can't book time off, you know from basically November until the end of January, you're like you eat, live, breathe retail, like the company that you work for, because it's obviously Christmas time. And you just have a lot of, especially in Canada, we only get 2 weeks of vacation every single year. So I knew that that wasn't the life that I wanted for myself. And I always envisioned, I know that the word freedom gets thrown around a ton, but I really wanted that. I wanted to have time freedom. I wanted to be able to decide how I wanted to spend my days. I wanted to be able to explore the world without having to request for time off and needing to be strategic with how much time I booked off and what
Yeah.
have you, right? And so I was looking for opportunities, like I mentioned, and there's a lot of different things out there. I think that you just have to figure out what is actually going to feel what feels aligned for sure for you. I think that you have to get really clear on what it is that you're looking for and then find avenues that are going to check off some of those boxes. But, had tried a couple different things. There's network marketing out there, which obviously is very, very, it takes a
Yes.
long time to build and it's not 100% sustainable in my personal opinion.
That's
So
what
that
I
didn't
think too. Yeah.
yeah, it didn't really feel quite right for me. Obviously, there's a lot of things out there that you can do in terms of like Amazon FBA and drop shipping. A lot of these things, though, do have a very long life cycle. And quite frankly, you also need a lot of capital to get some of these businesses
Absolutely.
started, which I didn't really have capital. So when I came across the world of remote sales, it's something that really intrigued me because I figured, okay, well, I already have the skill set technically of
Hmm.
being able to I view sales as just having conversations. I don't view it
That's
as
it.
this big scary thing that people make sales out to be. Everything is sales and it's a skill set that you literally will need for the rest of your life. But anyways, I knew that I already had, that skill set to a certain degree. And you didn't really need capital. You just needed to have a computer. You needed to be able to, learn how to there is maybe a component of learning sales, but I felt like I already had a lot of transferable skills. And so it's something that intrigued me. And I did research on the industry as a whole for a few months. That's how I found JD and the UCM group. And yeah, I just kind of followed him for a while. And then there was an opportunity one day to hop on a call with Hunter. I think everyone in our
Yep.
community knows Hunter. And he's actually, yeah, I connected with him and I just had this feeling like, okay, if I don't go all in on this, I'm
Yeah.
never going, my situation's never going to change. And I think that
True.
for me, I got into this situation where every single year every single year I was like, man, I'm just not happy with what I'm doing. I feel like there's more to my life than this. I don't know how to explain it, but I just feel like I'm meant to be living a bigger life than what I'm currently living. And every single year, I was having that same conversation with myself, and the people around me. And it's like, okay, well, eventually you have to get to a point where you just like, are you
Yeah.
going to keep complaining about it or are you going to do something about it, right? So
Of
I
course.
actually told myself in 2021, I joined UCM at the end of April 2021. But that year, heading into that year, I told myself it's going to be the last year that you're complaining about your situation and that you're staying exactly where you are. You have to do something about it. So, as scary as it was to like invest in myself and to make a transition,
Yeah.
I told myself, what's the worst case scenario? Worst case scenario, I end up, right where I already am, which is a situation
Yeah.
of not having. Right. So that's ultimately how the transition happened. And thankfully I was able to leave my full-time job within 30 days of joining UCM.
Hmm.
And
So
it's
you
been a
haven't
roller coaster.
left your job before finding something else, right? You left your job once you have an opportunity, or you just left your
Yeah.
job or went all in.
No, I left within 30 days because I already had something lined up. It was a full-time role. So it was, yes, remote, but it was 9 to 5 at the time. It was just a remote position.
That's right. Yep. Amazing. I remember that, Natalie, when I was working in a call center, right? I was actually selling as well for cable internet services in USA. Um, of course, working in a call center from over here in Pakistan. So I remember that one day I was taking calls and calls and calls, and one day I just plugged my headset off, and I said to my manager, "I don't want to work here anymore." He said, "Why?" I said, "I don't feel like coming every day and do the same thing again and again, right?
Mhm.
I don't want to do that. I feel like I lost in trust, right? And I was making money over there as well. That's not like, but it's not always making money. Just like you, you wanted to work like your own hours that like your own, you want to schedule your own hours. You wanted to work remotely from anywhere in the world. That's how my
Mhm.
why was like, I want to do something that I enjoy doing it, right? That's where I actually, I know that's a stupid decision I made at that time, that I had to sit like 1 or 2 months without any capital or any money. I tried a social media marketing agency. I tried Amazon FBA, network MLM, and things like that. But of course, they ask a lot of capital, and I did not have that, right, at that
Mhm.
time. That's where I realized I got a job actually in a company 9 to 5, but it was a remote job, like $10, $12 per hour plus commission, right? And I found out like, yeah, this is something I want to do. I started working and finding other roles, and that's where I started. And as soon as possible, I'm in a contact with UCM as well, and we'll see you inside very soon. And yeah, that's what it's all about, how strong your why is, right? So your why was strong enough, you wanted to live for yourself, right?
Yeah, I would definitely say that that's a component of it, definitely. And I think that, again, this is a buzzword of like figuring out your why, which I really do think is very, very important. And it's going to probably evolve as well. It's never going to
Hmm.
stay maybe the same. I think the overarching why will probably be the same, but I've always been like a forward thinker. I always think long term. So what can I do today to set me up for success long term? Like what do I want long term and what do I need to implement now to actually get me there? And so thinking about, again, I was working in retail, hours are very long. You're dealing with a lot of nonsense that just in
Yeah.
the grand scheme of things just do not matter. And a lot of like workplace politics, whatever, right? And so I knew in the future, if I ever do decide to have a family, I knew that that life, that schedule is not something that I ever wanted because it's not conducive to me being present in my life. So I established that my why was yes, freedom and autonomy, but I really also wanted presence. I wanted to feel present in my life. And I already had to miss out on a lot of things, family events, family get together, like hanging out with friends, doing all the things I really wanted to do. There was a lot of times I had to give those things up because of my work schedule and I didn't have control over my schedule. It's like my schedule was given to me on a Monday, and then like that's it. You have to work those hours that have been assigned to you. So you really are a prisoner to a
Yeah.
schedule that is not. It's benefiting somebody else, and so I knew that I wanted to. That was my biggest why is I want to find a way to be able to work as much for myself as possible and be able to dictate my own life. Like I just wanted to be present in my own life. I wanted to be able to call the shots in my own life. I wanted all of those things. And yeah, I would say that that's still very much my why, but it's also a level of freedom that I've experienced now through travel that I just don't want to answer to anybody. I don't want to do anything that I don't want
Yeah.
to do. I don't do anything that doesn't feel aligned. If it doesn't feel aligned, I can tell you I probably won't do it. It always has to be from a really authentic place. And that's just how I live my life. I want everything to be a reflection of my values and how I want to be, seen and how I want to help people. And yeah, I think that you just have to figure out like what is going to keep you in the game, even
Yeah.
when things aren't as immediate as you would like. And I always knew from day one, I actually always knew that remote sales would finally be the answer for me to
Mm.
change my situation. Even though it's not my forever plan, I knew that that was going to be the biggest stepping stone that I could take to really create this life for myself.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Tell us a little bit about how do you manage? Because it is at the end of the day providing services to the business owners, right? How do you manage to manage? Like I know right now you're in Colombia, right? If I'm not wrong, right?
Yep.
The other day you will be in another country, and then you will be in another country because you're actually exploring the world and you're traveling and you're going here and there. How do you manage the time zones and the calendar? And the first thing, business owners like, I want to work these hours. That's it. I want to work like 3, 4 hours for you a day, and stuff like that. How would you manage that?
Well, I think it's really important to obviously determine your must-have list. So for me, my must-have list for any offer that I take on is always I need to have autonomy over my schedule. I'm definitely happy to accommodate specific hours. However, I need to be able to control my own schedule. And no matter where I am in the world, whether I'm 6 hours ahead in Europe or now I'm an hour ahead in Colombia, I always operate on Eastern time zone. It just keeps me
Yeah.
really organized. So I am regardless of who I'm working with. I was on an offer last year where it was a little bit of a red flag for them that I was in Europe, but they didn't really know that until, I don't even remember how it came up, but I was like, I operate on Eastern hours, so I'm still able to accommodate the time zone that you're requesting. So geographically, it doesn't really matter where I'm located if I'm able
Yeah.
to accommodate the hours that you're looking for, right? And then the other thing too is, at the end of the day, we talk about this in UCM. It's you're a one closer agency. Like that's really how you should be
Yes.
positioning yourself. So
Yes.
I think a lot of people transition into this space and they still operate very much as an employee, which
As
I'm
an
not
employee,
necessarily,
yeah.
yeah, some people, they do thrive off of that, and that's really what they're looking for. And if that's the case, amazing. There's a lot of opportunities out there that are 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, that you can definitely get into. I personally wanted to be able to make my own hours, and I wanted to, I if I don't want to work full time a couple days, like I wanted to have flexibility within my schedule. So that was on my must have list, and I only look for opportunities where I'm able to have those conversations during the initial meeting, so that they know what the expectations are, I know what their expectations are, and we're able to kind of meet somewhere in the middle. But I will only ever work on an offer where I have full control over my schedule. I would never take an offer that told me you have to work, between 9 and 4 or 10 to 5. It wouldn't be the right fit for me. And a lot of my offers too, I've been known in the past to work a lot of different offers at the same time, which I do think is good, just to have a little bit more flexibility and also variety in what you're selling. But all of my roles, for the most part, were all part time, so that I could kind of to structure it however I wanted. So, work 2 to 3 hours on one offer, 2 to 3 hours on another offer. So that's really how I manage it. But people often ask me how I balance.
Yeah,
It's
that's what exactly what I wanted to ask. Yeah.
Yeah, it's never really been an issue because again, I think that you have to get really clear on what it is that's important to you and what are your non-negotiables, and then kind of make it work. And even on the times where I was working a little bit more because that was what was requested, even though I really wanted to be on there was an offer that I was on last year. I really wanted to be a part of the team, but it did require a little bit more time. They had all these stipulations, like you have to be available during these times. You have to be able to take a minimum of 5 calls. All things I didn't necessarily want to do, but I do think that there's a time and a place to be, you have to work a little bit harder in certain seasons. And I was willing to do that. Now, what I said to them is, I'm willing to do this. Absolutely. It's a little bit different than what I normally do. I'm willing to do it. Now, if I, in the next 30 to 60 days, prove that my revenue that I
Yeah.
generate is going to be the same, if not higher, than me following these guidelines, is there any way that we can revisit this conversation of being able to take calls whenever I want or taking fewer calls? And that was absolutely something that we negotiated, and they were willing to accommodate that, right? So I think that you just have to be able to position yourself in a way of
Yeah.
like, if I drive results, can we revisit this conversation? And there's usually a way that you can meet in the middle.
It's actually depend on actually the first conversation you're having with them. They will see you if you're an employer or you're an entrepreneur, right? You're a service provider or you are an employee mindset, right? Um, that's exactly where the game will change, right? You position yourself here so then now they know like they are talking to somebody who's actually a business mind, right? Who's actually a business mind and not a job mentality, right? That's exactly where you will position yourself. I'm not a $10 per hour employee, and I am an entrepreneur. I can provide you the services on my term, but you will get the revenue, right? Your
Yeah.
company will grow, and I will help you grow your company. That's
Mhm.
exactly what the post. Yeah, I know UCM actually talk more about, and that's really amazing. But meanwhile, enjoying the places, exploring more, enjoying the food, the streets, and everything. taking those cool pictures that you take every time. How do you manage that stress and that you know pressure of sales? Um, I mean, of course, that's still there, right? How do you manage that?
Um, I'll disagree. I mean, I personally don't feel stress or pressure. I
Okay.
think that the way, I truly don't. I'm not someone that gets stressed very easily, and I don't really have that much stress in my life, to be honest, because I really do believe that when it comes to sales, you know, I, a couple things I want to share. The first is I
Okay.
think that I've been able to really develop a lot of efficiency in my process. It's something that I really
Okay.
learned, when I started selling on the offer that I'm selling on now. I've been on this offer for 2 years.
Okay.
Um, I was initially placed on this offer by, my good friend Brent. He had an agency, and that's something that he really teaches is how can you become more efficient in your process. And JD talked about this too. It's okay, now I've learned how to sell, and I definitely had my season where I was taking 7 or 8, sales calls every single day. My
Yes.
calendar was stacked. Because you do need to get those reps in. You need to be able to find your own style. You need to know, like, okay, how do I navigate conversations? You have to keep your mind really, really sharp, and you're not good at sales at the beginning. You're not good at it, right? But as you start enrolling people, as you start having conversations and really learning what your style is and what your voice is, then
Yes.
you can really double down on your style. So something that Brent really talked about was, okay, now how can we become more efficient in our process? So for me, what that meant is how can I make more money in less time? I am
Okay.
enrolling at a decent rate, maybe at the time, I think I was enrolling at like 60 to 70% of everyone that I talked to. I'm like, okay, now how can I enroll people at 80%, make more
Wow.
money? So, I suggested again, this comes down to being someone who is an entrepreneur. So even though
Mm-hmm.
you're technically selling on an offer, how can you provide some sort of insight to make the company more money? So I suggested, why don't we sell this package? We typically were only selling 6-month contracts, 6 or 12, but I would say probably 90% of our clients were coming in at 6 months. And I said, well, we know that the amount of people that extend their coaching beyond the 6 months is quite high. So why don't
Yeah.
I instead sell a 9-month program so that I'm making more money and the company's making more money? So that was the first thing. And I just started selling, that business owner that I currently work for, she didn't know if it was going to be successful. I said, let me just try it. And
Yeah.
if I'm able to make this happen, and then true
Mm-hmm.
enough, that's all I was selling was 9 months, 9 months, 9 months. So I gave myself a raise. And then beyond that, it's really learning, spending the time learning sales, paying attention to the conversations that you're having. How can you make those better, right? And always keeping that knife really, really sharp, like that
Yes.
iron sharp.
Yeah.
And I just learned to take less calls and
Yeah.
close a higher number. So, and that's something honestly that happened when I started traveling because I didn't want to spend all my time behind a screen. I really wanted to be able to explore the city that I was in and then, maybe take a couple of sales calls. And I just felt better showing up on these calls. I think that's why it's important to make sure that you do things that make you feel like yourself and not constantly be like obsessing over sales. This is my personal take. I know some people will disagree that you always have to be working to be successful. But for me, what made me more successful is doing more things that I enjoy doing because I brought that into my sales calls. I was lighter, I was happier, and people feel that, right? So I now do not feel any pressure because I have developed a lot of efficiency in my process where I can only take 2 to 3 sales calls a day, sometimes even one call a day. And I know that the chances are high that I will
That
probably
you're
enroll
closing
them.
them. Yeah.
Yeah, and then in terms of pressure, I think that is a really big mistake. And I know that it's only human nature, but
Yeah.
a couple of weeks ago, we experienced, like any offer, a little bit of a dip in quality in the leads that were coming in, and there was, a full week where I took, maybe 8 or 9 sales calls and I only enrolled one. And then people
Okay.
start thinking, okay, well, I'm going to change my process. I'm going to do all like, what can I do differently? And they start
Hmm.
really like freaking out over like, what can I do different? But the
Hmm.
results that got you to an 80% enrollment, it hasn't changed. The leads have maybe changed, but you don't have to change your entire process. So, my point is when things are slow, look at what you can control, but don't go changing around your process and trying to make everything different, because the way that you approach every single conversation should be the exact same. Whether you've closed the last 5 calls or haven't closed the last 5 calls, I don't put any pressure on myself. I enter every single conversation the exact same way, because it's the exact same process, and eventually one of them
Absolutely.
will enroll, and then you're out of it. So all that to say, I don't feel any pressure or any stress. It's not something, I'll be honest, I never experience any type of pressure or stress when it comes to sales. My process remains the exact same every single time. And as long as I know that I showed up to the best of my ability on these calls, that's all I can really do.
Do you think like you don't feel pressure? That's the reason you close more?
Potentially,
Yeah.
potentially. I mean, I think that it's a very volatile industry, obviously, and there's a lot of ups and downs. Obviously, you go
Mm,
through phases where maybe leads are down, lead quality is down, what have you. But yeah, I always just have the belief that it's temporary, right? So I
yeah.
think it's just being able to, um, I think that you just have to be able to like really regulate your own emotions. I think as
Yeah.
a you just need to be able to do that. But yeah, it's like not freaking out about the process. It's just knowing you have a process that works and you're approaching every single
Yeah.
call
Just
the
need to be
exact same way.
present in the moment, right? Need to be present in the
Yeah.
moment. Yeah. Like just like you are in Colombia and you are excited about exploring the streets and going to the city and everything, but that's not stuck in your mind when you're on a sales call, right? You're actually on a sales call and you're actually paying attention, and you're trying to actually convert that by helping them, right? So, and when you
Yeah.
don't have like a lot of pressure of, oh my God, I'm wasting my time a lot of years. It's been like 5 p.m. now. I have to go out, right? If that's
Mhm.
something is in your mind, or if the sales is are on your mind always, that have you right, right. So if you are not actually um, taking that pressure, a sales call, that's where you're actually closing more, right?
Yeah, I would say so. And again, I think that it just goes back to, even though people don't know that I'm in Colombia, I think that
Yeah,
being able to live a life that makes, like, doing the things that make you, that make you feel good, make you feel happy, doing those things, those are all the things that you bring onto sales calls that we don't talk about, but it does make a difference. I think that when you feel very aligned with, um, just how you're living your life, I think that
yeah,
that makes
you're
a huge
actually transferring your energy, right? You are transferring
precisely.
your energy. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, precisely. And again, that's truly when I started realizing that this is something that I should be doing, because it actually made me a better closer when I stopped focusing on actually enrolling people and selling
Yeah.
and closing deals. When I just focused on just what I wanted to do. And I remember the first time ever I went through at the beginning of last year, I was in Budapest, and I loved
Hmm.
Budapest. It was such a magical city. And I
Absolutely.
was just so happy there. And I had told, I said, I'm not going to take a lot of sales calls because I really love the city. I want to spend all my time exploring. I was maybe taking like 2 sales calls a day. And for the entire week, so I'm talking 8 days that I was away, 2 calls a day, maybe 3 calls at the very most. I enrolled every single one. Every single call that I took those eight
Oh
days,
wow.
I enrolled every single one. And the biggest difference is because I was doing things that made me happy. It made me, and
Yeah.
it's a different type of energy that you bring onto calls, right? And I go through those phases all the time. Like when I was just traveling a couple months ago, when
Hmm.
I was in London, I went through a streak. 20 calls. I had 19 calls and 20 closes all in a row. All in a row. One of them was a follow up. But again, I always analyze like, well, what was going on? Like, why was I? And yes, a component of it is, of course, like people are maybe a little bit more qualified, but I think my energy was just better because I was really happy. So I think that when people really focus too much on the outcome of like, I need to enroll this person because I want the commission, that is, you're
Yes.
never, when you focus on selling, you're never going to sell. You're never going to sell when all you're focused on is selling. You have to focus
Absolutely.
on the things, and then the sale naturally flows. But when you're present, you're connected, you're really truly listening to the person and coming up to a game plan together. When they feel like, okay, this person obviously cares about me, they genuinely care about the outcome that I am looking to accomplish and it's genuine, I think that the sale naturally follows. It naturally follows. So I
Naturally,
know
it's
it's
natural. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I think that a lot of people, I know that it's not tangible, so it's hard for people when they ask for advice. But I'm like, detach from the sale, detach from it, and
From the
just do more.
outcome. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. And once you do that, that's when it naturally follows. So
That's amazing. And I think a lot of people wanted to hear everything that you just said because whatever you told us, that's exactly what you are doing. That's what you lived, right? It's not a
yeah.
content. It's not something from a book. It's not something from a script, right? It's just like a natural conversation between us. And this is something amazing. What would you say to those people who are in sales already right now, in remote sales, or trying to get in, right? And finding it so hard actually to get in? Do they need to invest in a program and learn, or do they just need to try it themselves? And how can they position themselves for the new people, or even for the people who are struggling right now? Because if I see you, you're not struggling. You are an entrepreneur already, a closer entrepreneur, right? Closer agency, one man show, right?
Mhm.
How they can be. This is the last thing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I really think that the struggle is honestly necessary for a lot of people. I struggled for a very long time. For the first year that I was a closer, I made little to no money. And I share that often because I think that that is a reality that a lot of people don't talk about. This
Yeah.
is very much, romanticize this lifestyle, but it takes a lot of hard work and it takes a lot of dedication.
Mm,
You're going to fall on your face multiple times. I think that you
mm,
just, again, need to be really connected to why you're doing this. But for anyone who is either struggling, or even looking to get started, do I think that you need to invest in something? Not necessarily. I mean, I don't think that you have to. You can certainly try and do it on your own. I think that are you going to increase the speed and likelihood of getting specific results if you do invest in something? Possibly, possibly. But when it comes to investing in things, I think that people need to know really what is, again, aligned with them and what they're looking to accomplish because there's a lot of sales training out there. There's a lot of training out there in general. And I think that you need to figure out like, do I need to have the skill set if I don't even know how to position myself as a business owner, if I don't even know how to
yeah.
navigate this industry, if I don't know how to brand myself? I think that there you kind of have to identify where you're at in your journey and what is actually going to help you get to that next step. It's not always sales skills. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it is. But for me personally, it was the opposite. I'm like, I need to learn the basics first, the foundation first. And then when I got decent at sales, I was like, okay, now I really want to get good at sales or great at sales. And
Yeah.
then investing in sales, sales training after that made sense. So I think that you just need to identify like where you're at, what is the next step and what's going to help you get there. Because there's a lot of different things out there. I think that you just need to figure out also what is aligned with you. Because even with sales training, I've invested in a lot of different things, and
Yeah.
some things, or I haven't invested personally, but I've done a lot of different sales trainings, and quite frankly,
Hmm.
a lot of it didn't really feel it just it works for a lot of people, but it just
Mm.
didn't work for me because it just didn't feel sincere when I was adopting those methods. So,
Mm.
yeah, I think you just kind of
Not
have to
matching
figure
with
out,
the personality, right?
yeah, and also just the way that you want. I think that a lot of people are shoving this idea that like there's only one right way to sell, and this is how you
Yeah.
would handle this particular objection. And quite frankly, this is my personal experience. The second that I ditched the script. Now, I do want to say I did have to use a script to understand the psychology and the
Of
frameworks. I
course.
do think that scripts serve a purpose.
Hmm.
But once I actually understood, okay, if I show more of myself and actually start listening and actually start selling in a way that feels good for me, like it actually feels like I was in a flow, that's really when I started seeing results. So a lot of sales out there doesn't necessarily teach you that. They teach you
Absolutely.
framework and process and strategy and tactics. um, there's a time and a place for it. There's
Yeah,
a time and a
they
place
don't
for it.
tell you to be yourself, right? Be yourself, put your personality in, show them your identity, right? And just follow the framework, and that's it. And when because everybody is unique and everybody have their own charm, right? Like right now we are having a natural conversation, right? And it's valuable for a lot of other people, right? It's a transaction to them, right? uh, just our conversation. So just like that, your energy is different, my energy is different, somebody else's energy
Mhm.
is different. So if they put their self and they actually learn what their own selling style is and how they can grow uh, with their own selling style and position themselves as a person who is bringing real kind of value, right? That's where I
Yeah.
think they will make more sales, make more money, and more impact, because these two things we always want to make: more impact and more money. That's two things
Hmm.
everybody wants to make. So, with that being said, I would say thank you to you that you hopped on today and shared a lot of value, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. Yes, it was a great conversation. I'm so happy.
Thank you. Thank you.